snow fell like whispered prayers that night. Soft, endless, and slow enough to make time itself hold its breath. The town of Whispering Hollow lay buried beneath winter's hush, its rooftops and fences outlined in quiet frost. Only one sound disturbed the stillness. A deep, echoing bark that rolled down the frozen street like a heartbeat no one could ignore. Valor, the old K9, stood at the edge of a gate, his breath visible in the pale air, his eyes fixed on the girl who sat motionless on the porch in her wooden wheelchair. Each bark was deliberate, as though he were trying to summon someone from the shadows or wake a memory buried under ice. Inside the houses, curtains trembled. Whispers followed. "He's at it again," muttered Mrs. Groves from behind her frosted glass. "That cursed dog barking at the crippled girl." Her husband grunted, pulling the curtain shut. "Ain't right, that sound. It carries bad luck." In Whispering Hollow, everything carried a superstition. Even mercy. Especially mercy. Marshal Rowan Creed stood outside his cabin across the ridge, the echo of Valor's bark cutting through the wind like a call he couldn't unhear. The old man looked worn by more winters than the town could count. Broad-shouldered once, now bent slightly from carrying too much silence. His gray beard caught flakes of snow as he listened, unmoving, to the rhythm of the barking. There was something in it, something more than noise. He'd tried scolding the dog before, even leashing him at night. But Valor always found his way to that gate, to that girl. And though Rowan didn't understand it, a part of him didn't want to stop it anymore. He tugged his coat tighter and called, "Valor! Come on, boy!" But the dog didn't turn. His tail was low, his body rigid, as though the whole weight of his purpose was focused on that small figure wrapped in a woolen blanket, a lantern flickering beside her. Rowan sighed, trudging through the snow, boots creaking over the ice. When he reached the gate, Lila Mae Halloway lifted her face. Her eyes, pale blue and still, met his with a calmness that disarmed him. "He doesn't mean harm," she said quietly. Her voice the gentlest sound he'd heard all winter. "He just remembers." Rowan paused, unsure what to answer. "Remembers what?" The girl smiled faintly. "That's for him to tell." Her tone wasn't strange. It was solemn, as if she and the dog shared a secret language made of silence and winter air. Valor turned then, padding back toward Rowan, pressing against his leg like he'd done something right. Rowan knelt, running his hand over the coarse black fur dusted with snow. "You're causing a storm of gossip, boy." The dog's ears flicked, and for a moment, Rowan thought he heard something else in the distance. The faint creak of wood, the rustle of wind around the old churchyard where time never fully slept. By morning, the town had a new rumor. They said the old marshal was visiting the ghost girl. Some claimed she'd brought the curse that froze the lake that year. Others said she spoke to spirits. Whispering Hollow had always been hungry for a story, and grief made easy meals of kind hearts. Rowan tried to ignore them, but that afternoon, while chopping wood, he saw her again. Lila on her porch, a thin shawl drawn around her shoulders, her mother sweeping the steps behind her. Tess Halloway's face looked carved by years of defending against words sharp as icicles. She nodded politely to Rowan across the yard, but quickly turned away, ashamed of something that wasn't hers to carry. Valor barked once more, softer this time, as though greeting a friend. That night, Rowan found bread at his gate, a small loaf wrapped in cloth. The scent was faint but warm, carrying the sweetness of honey and wheat. He looked toward the Halloway home. In the distance, the faint light of their lantern burned against the snow. No words had been exchanged, yet something in that small offering settled inside him. Gratitude, perhaps, or the beginning of understanding. The next few days passed in rhythms of quiet kindness. Each morning, the dog would wander to the Halloway fence, tail wagging, eyes gentle. Lila began to leave scraps for him, a crust of bread, sometimes a strip of jerky. Her mother disapproved, but never stopped her. "They'll talk," Tess warned. Lila smiled, glancing toward the window where frost had painted flowers on the glass. "They already do, Mama. Might as well give them something worth talking about." When Rowan passed by, he tipped his hat, saying nothing. Lila nodded in return, her face pale but strong. Between them, Valor's bark had softened into something closer to joy. And for the first time in months, Rowan felt a flicker of peace beneath the weight of his years. But peace never lasted long in Whispering Hollow. The sheriff, Deacon Hurst, came riding through the snow one afternoon, his coat snapping in the wind, his eyes sharp with authority. "Heard your dog's been haunting the Halloway girl," he said, voice laced with disdain. "Folks don't like it. Think it's bad luck." Rowan looked up from his chopping block. "He's not haunting anyone," Hurst smirked. "Then why won't he stop barking?" Rowan wiped the sweat from his brow, meeting the man's gaze. Maybe he knows something the rest of us forgot. The sheriff leaned forward in his saddle. You best keep your mud away from that family. Trouble follows them. Don't say I didn't warn you. Then he rode off, the sound of his horse fading into the wind. That night, Rowan couldn't sleep. The wind moaned through the chimney, carrying the faint echo of Valor's bark. He sat by the fire, whiskey in hand, the flames painting his lined face in gold and shadow. He remembered another winter, years ago, when a girl cried for help on the far edge of town, and he arrived too late. He'd carried that failure like frost in his bones ever since. Perhaps that's why Valor's loyalty stirred something in him, a stubborn refusal to let another cry go unanswered. At dawn, he followed the barking again. The snow was heavier now, falling in curtains of white. He found Lila by the fence, her hands trembling as she tried to fix a broken wheel on her chair. Valor stood beside her, whining softly. Without a word, Rowan stepped forward and crouched down. Let me. She hesitated, then nodded. He worked in silence, the sound of his tools mixing with the gentle rhythm of her breathing. When the wheel finally turned again, she whispered, Thank you. He looked up, his voice low. He really doesn't leave your side, does he? Lila smiled faintly. He did once. The night my father died. The words hung in the cold air, brittle and dangerous. Rowan froze. Your father, was that? She nodded. An accident, they said. But Valor, he never believed that. Every time he barks, it's like he's trying to remind someone. Maybe me, maybe everyone. The wind rose, rattling the bare branches. Rowan stood, unsure what to say. The truth in her eyes was older than grief. It carried something heavier, like unspoken guilt mixed with courage. Sometimes dogs know before people do, he murmured. That night, Valor didn't come home. Rowan waited until the moon climbed high, silvering the roofs of Whispering Hollow. The silence outside felt wrong, too deep, too still. He grabbed his coat, his lantern, and followed the trail of paw prints down the slope. The snow was thick, his breath short in the cold. But he kept going until he saw the shape of the Halloway porch. There, under the soft halo of a lantern, Valor sat guard beside Lila, his fur glistening with snowflakes. She looked up at Rowan, eyes red from tears. He won't leave, she whispered. He's been like this all night. Rowan stepped closer, the cold biting through his gloves. Lila, you should go inside. But she shook her head. He's waiting for something. Or someone. Valor barked once, then turned toward the darkness beyond the fence, ears pricked. For a long moment, none of them moved. Then Lila spoke again, her voice trembling. He knows what they did. He knows who really killed my father. The world seemed to stop. Even the snow paused midair. Rowan felt a slow dread settle over him, the kind that crept like a shadow under the skin. He looked at the girl, her fragile frame bathed in the lantern's light, and then at the dog, silent now but alert, his eyes burning with meaning. Who? Rowan asked softly. But Lila only looked toward the horizon, where the moonlight brushed the outline of the sheriff's distant cabin. Ask him, she said. Ask the one your town still trusts. Rowan's lantern flickered, its flame shrinking against the wind. In that fragile glow, he saw what Winter had been trying to tell him all along. Truth doesn't stay buried, no matter how deep the snow. Valor barked once more, not in fear but in warning. And as the sound echoed across Whispering Hollow, Rowan Creed knew this winter would not end in silence. Morning came gray and brittle. The storm had quieted, but the world felt hollowed out, as if the snow itself was listening. Rowan Creed walked through the half-light, his boots sinking into drifts that had swallowed the road. Valor trotted beside him, muzzle frosted, eyes sharp. The dog's breath came in steady bursts, visible against the mist. Neither man nor beast made a sound until they reached the edge of the Halloway property, where the air held the faint scent of burned wood and iron. Lila waited by the fence, wrapped in a heavy shawl, her hair loose and damp with snowmelt. He was here last night, she said quietly. Sheriff Hurst. Rowan felt his stomach turn. What did he want? He said to forget what my father wrote. She held out a small, leather-bound journal, the edges warped by time. He said if I kept reading, the next fire might not stop at our porch. Rowan took the book gently, the cold leather stiff beneath his gloves. He opened it to a page smudged by fingerprints and ash. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. Lila's father, Sam Halloway, had written like a man who believed the truth could outlive him. Deacon knows what he's done. Valor won't forget. Neither will I. Rowan's breath fogged the air. He looked up at the girl. He wrote this before the accident? She nodded. 2 days before. Something inside Rowan shifted. He'd spent his life believing law was a matter of record and evidence. But in Whispering Hollow, truth had always worn a different coat. one woven from fear and silence. "Lila," he said softly, "you can't stay here." "Where would I go?" Her eyes held no fear, only a kind of weary defiance. "If he's coming for me, I'd rather meet him where my father fell." The words rooted deep in him, cold and resolute. Rowan glanced at Valor, whose ears twitched toward the horizon. The wind carried a faint echo, the sound of hooves. "Inside," Rowan ordered. "Now." But before they could move, Hurst's voice cut through the air. "Marshal Creed!" The sheriff rode up the slope, his coat flaring behind him like a black wing. 2 deputies followed, faces hidden under scarves. Hurst dismounted slowly, his boots crunching over ice. "I warned you to keep your mud out of this." He looked at Lila, his smile small and cruel. "And you, girl, you've been spreading stories that could ruin good men." Rowan stepped forward, the old authority in his voice returning like a ghost. "Good men don't threaten children, Deacon." Hurst's eyes darkened. "You forget yourself. You're not the law anymore." Rowan met his gaze, calm as the cold. "Neither are you." For a heartbeat no one breathed. Then Valor barked once, a sharp crack that shattered the stillness. It wasn't just a bark, it was a warning. Hurst's hand twitched toward his holster. "Call off your dog, Creed." "He's calling you," Rowan said. "Because he remembers." The sheriff's smile faltered. Snow began to fall again, soft flakes landing on the brim of his hat. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough," Rowan said. "I know Sam Halloway didn't fall through the ice by accident, and I know you were there when he did." Hurst stepped closer, his shadow crossing Rowan's boots. "You've been listening to that crippled girl's fairy tales." "I've been reading her father's words," Rowan replied. He lifted the journal. "Your name's in them." For the first time, Hurst's control cracked. His gloved hand trembled slightly. "You think anyone will believe you?" "This town owes me its peace." Rowan's voice dropped to a whisper. "Peace built on silence isn't peace." Valor growled low, steady as thunder. The deputies exchanged uneasy looks. "Enough," Hurst snapped. "You'll hand over that book." "You'll have to take it," Rowan said. The sheriff's gun came up fast, but Valor was faster. The dog lunged, teeth bared, knocking Hurst back into the snow. The gun fired once, the shot echoing through the trees. Lila screamed. Rowan dove forward, tackling one of the deputies, the journal flying from his hand. The other deputy fled, boots skidding across the ice. When the smoke cleared, Valor was still. A small red stain spread across the snow beneath his chest. Rowan froze, disbelieving. The world narrowed to the sound of his own breath and the faint whimper that escaped the dog's throat. Lila crawled forward, her hands shaking. "Valor, oh, please no." Rowan pressed his hand against the wound, but the blood seeped fast, dark against the white. "Stay with me, boy," he whispered. Valor's eyes fluttered open. For a moment he seemed to look past them, toward the frozen river in the distance. His paw twitched once, then fell still. Hurst staggered to his feet, clutching his arm. "That beast was mad!" But the words died as Rowan raised his revolver. "You'll answer for this," Rowan said, his voice raw but steady. "For Sam, for the girl." "For him," Hurst sneered. "You can't prove anything." Rowan's eyes flicked toward the river. "Maybe not yet." He holstered his gun and walked away, leaving the sheriff cursing behind him. Lila followed, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Where are we going?" "To finish what Valor started." The snow deepened as they approached the river. The ice stretched like a sheet of glass across the valley. Rowan's lantern threw a weak circle of light on the surface. "He kept coming here," Lila murmured. "After the accident, barking at the same spot." She pointed toward a cluster of broken reeds frozen into the ice. Rowan knelt, brushing the snow aside. Beneath the surface, something glinted. Metal, dark and corroded. He broke the ice with the butt of his revolver, each strike echoing through the valley. When the water finally opened, he reached in, his hand closing around something cold and heavy. A revolver, old and rusted, the initials DH carved into the handle. Rowan lifted it into the lantern light. "He tried to hide it," he whispered. Valor knew. Behind them a faint crunch of footsteps. Rowan turned. Hurst stood at the edge of the riverbank, pistol drawn, his breath ragged. "You should have left it buried." "You should have left him alive," Rowan answered. The sheriff fired. The bullet tore through Rowan's coat, grazing his side. He staggered but stayed upright, raising his own weapon. The sound of the next shot rolled like thunder through the snow. Hurst dropped to his knees, clutching his chest. His pistol fell from his grasp, skidding across the ice into the hole Rowan had broken. It vanished beneath the freezing water, swallowed like a secret finally tired of being kept. Rowan stood breathing hard, the sting of cold mixing with blood. Lila watched from her chair, her face pale but unflinching. "Is he—" Rowan nodded. "It's over." But the truth was heavier than victory. He sank to one knee beside Valor's body, brushing snow from the dog's fur. "You did it, boy," he murmured. "You kept your promise." The world was silent again. But it wasn't the same kind of silence. It was gentler, emptied of fear. Days passed before the thaw came. The town buried Valor on the hill overlooking the valley. No speeches, no ceremony. Just a pine marker and a collar laid neatly at its base. The people of Whispering Hollow said little, but their eyes softened when they saw Lila at the grave, her hand resting on the wooden cross. Some nodded in quiet respect. Others simply walked away, ashamed of what they'd believed. Spring crept in by degrees. The snow withdrew, revealing the earth beneath like a healing wound. Rowan often visited the hill, sitting beside the grave with his hat in his lap. Sometimes Lila joined him, bringing a wildflower or two to press into the soil. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. One morning, as the first birds returned, Lila took a deep breath and gripped the arms of her chair. Slowly she stood, unsteady, trembling, but standing. Rowan froze, afraid to break the moment with words. She looked down at him, smiling through tears. "He told me I could," she said softly. "In dreams. He said the world still needs walking souls." He stood beside her, offering his arm. Together they faced the sunrise, its light touching the grave, the town, the thawing river below. For the first time the valley sounded alive again. The whisper of water, the rustle of branches, the faint echo of a bark carried on the wind. As the days grew warmer, Rowan packed his belongings into an old satchel. He told Lila he'd be leaving soon, heading west where no one knew his name. She nodded, though her eyes dimmed. "Will you come back?" He looked toward Valor's grave, the pine marker now draped in green. "Every soul finds its way home," he said. Before he left, he placed the leather journal on her porch. Inside was a note written in his steady, careful hand. "Truth is not a sound. It's an echo. You made it heard." That evening, as dusk settled over Whispering Hollow, the old storyteller's voice returned. The one that began the tale and would outlive them all. "There are some winters that never truly end," it said. "They stay inside us until something pure breaks through the frost. A hand offered, a truth spoken, a creature's last breath spent in love." The wind moved through the valley like a sigh. The lights in the houses flickered to life, and for once, no one spoke of curses or guilt. They spoke instead of courage, of kindness, of the girl who walked when she wasn't supposed to. And somewhere beyond the ridge, Rowan Creed rode into the fading light, the sound of a phantom bark following him across the snow. He didn't look back. He didn't have to. The world behind him was already changing, softened by memory, warmed by faith. "In every bark there was love," the old voice whispered, "and in every silence, forgiveness." If this tale found a place in your heart, remember to stay a while, for there are many more whispers yet to be told. Subscribe, and let the next story find you before the snow falls again.